Hello everybody and welcome to this week's auction video of auctions ending anywhere between Friday the 15th of August and Sunday the 17th. As always, there's a lot of great auctions up, so I do recommend checking them out, but we did bring forth some really nice highlights for this week, starting off with this Orange Dream Hurricane Clown. Hurricane Clowns are absolutely insanely cool. They bring a nice cool pattern to it and some nice crisp colors. In certain combos, you can see here, you can do a lot with Hurricane and Clown, and it works well with just about anything. It pairs well with things that bring in nice, bright, beautiful colors, but doesn't take away from contrast of dark colors either. You can definitely see that in many of these animals here. One thing I really love about Hurricane is that often it will bring the eye stripe back in. In this combo here, you can see it here, just kind of brings the eye stripe in and then just actually wraps back into the pattern. Clown often will completely wipe away any semblance of what the eye stripe would have been. But as you can see, it's not just the eye stripe coming back as normal. It's much thinner up here and then kind of gets a little bit larger and thicker and wavy even, going into, like I said, the whole pattern. It just starts at the eye and then just morphs into the entire pattern. It goes down all the way to the tail. Often there'll be really thick eye stripes as well. But yeah, that's the sort of potential you have with something like this. It's very nice that Orange Dream is with it too. It'll keep things very nice, bright, beautiful. But as you can see from a lot of those combos there, they pair very, very well with other genetics like Yellow Belly, like Cypress. Things like that will definitely make this pop. But a boy like this would be a great way to get something started with a Hurricane Clown project, no matter what budget you're on as well, whether you put it to a het clown girl with some extra genetics in there or to a visual clown so that you know that you're always pumping out visual clowns. There's a lot of cool potential, but not on a crazy out of this world budget. And if you really wanted to start building stuff around the Hurricane project, a boy would be a nice way to do that, because you'd be able to put this to many different females and start working that Hurricane gene into as much as possible. Some of the more gorgeous ones that we've ever seen were from Windy City Reptiles, including this Hurricane Hypo Clown that we saw at the Schaumburg show recently. There's a lot of awesome potential and beautiful combos you can make with Hurricane and Clown. Next up would be this Paint boy right here. And Paint is a recessive gene that doesn't get its proper due. And that's kind of a tale to tell you. There's genetics out there that have been worked for a very, very long time, but yet haven't been worked well. So they're not in a whole bunch of combinations. But then one day they just blow up. Lace, while not what we're talking about, is a perfect example of this. Lace had been around for a very long time, and then I would say only within the last 3, maybe 4 years has it really hit for the mainstream, and now it is completely out of this world and everybody wants it. Paint is another one that I feel like could do that. It really brings in a lot of cool pattern and this almost smudged calico type look to it. Many of them have this appearance of having this smeared paint type look across the side of it. Lots of different cool combinations that you can make with something like this, but what's even cooler is that there's a lot that hasn't been done. So who knows what can be made? And those are really the sorts of things that if you like something like this granulated chaos, that is something that you could be telling that story. You could be making combinations to show everyone why this is something that you should get into, and that's really all it takes. Genetics are not usually worked by many people because there's somewhat of a risk factor, and not so much in money all the time, sometimes for sure, but more or less just in time. You could be working a project for a very long time just to find that it's just okay, maybe. And at that point, for some people anyways, it might not pay off for them, whether that be in a monetary way or in a creative way. But Paint does show an extreme look to it. That is a very extreme look. This one here has some good size to it too. Being a boy, if you wanted to work the Paint project, this is a good way to do it, whether you're on a budget or not. You can start working a boy into everything, being that you can make your own hets at that point. You can breed those to females with lots of extra genetics in them, maybe even some other recessives themselves, so that you can eventually make double recessives and combinations. The sky's the limit. And we've talked about Paint before. It is a really cool genetic. Someone who I know that will tell you all about it, that works it pretty well and is a really good resource for learning and always willing to help, would be Jim from Southwest Wisconsin Reptiles. He works some of the Paint project and is a really good person as well. So a really cool animal if you wanted to start something that not really everybody has. Speaking of something that not really everybody has, this is not something I really knew much about. I think I've seen a few of these before, and I'm going to attempt to say it. Zuwadi Yellow Belly. It is of breeding size. It is a very rare gene, and if you look at the actual morph, there's not too many of these available, and they are fairly up there in price, especially this clown. Just in general, I mean, you can see here, this is 4 genes, the Orange Dream, Mojave, Zuwadi, Vanilla, which is very similar similar to Fire, by the way, or Enchi as well, so 5 genes. And it's a het clown as well, so there's some good stuff going on there, but you can see that the listing price anyways is fairly high. Now, the listing price doesn't always mean anything, but if you go to the sold section, there are some sold animals for a decent amount still. Now, monetary value is not what should get you into something, I don't believe, because there is some risk in that. But that being said, this has no reserve. Our last two did have a reserve, which means you had to meet that to get it. This has no reserve, so he is going to sell to somebody. And there is an extreme look to this. There's nothing that doesn't meet the eye. It's a pretty extreme pattern change here. And yes, it does have yellow belly, which can affect some stuff, but there's some pretty extreme color in this as well. And this is an older individual at that, but there's some citrusy type splashing coming up, almost gives it a moss type look in some ways. Granulation galore. There's some pretty extreme looks to this morph, and I have no idea if this has a super form or not. And like I said, it is not something I'm incredibly familiar with, but this is something neat, something unique, something rare, and it is not a crazy amount. So whether or not this ends up being a crazy good monetary decision for you, it still could scratch that creative itch to try something new, to attempt something that not many people have done. And it doesn't hurt that it has yellow belly in there. It's probably paired with one of the best genes that you could be paired with, that can just create cool, awesome examples. When it's paired with just about anything, it really helps and enhances anything it's in. Great one for it to be paired to, so you can start working this into other things. I mean, you already see a few of those, like what clown would look like and such, but it is pretty extreme what it's doing here. Again, like I said, I don't know a whole bunch about the history of this genetic or anything like that, but I do think it is a great opportunity for someone should they want to work something very unique. Next up, I wanted to showcase some of the Cypress clowns that they have available, specifically from Herp Collectors here. This Cypress leopard clown female is nice, beautiful, bright. I love what Cypress always does to the head, just brings in this nice, beautiful, crisp orange and really just cleans the animal up. I think Cypress and clown go together like peas in a pod, and this being a female at that, no reserve, there is a lot of interest. If you wanted to see what one with a couple extra genes in their AK, just swap out the leopard for Spotnose and bring Fire along. You can really start to see how citrusy and bright these animals can look. Again, it's got some decent size to this little boy right here. Also available from the same breeder, by the way, so if you wanted to get both of them, you could combine that shipping, I'm sure. But they really hold a very, very nice color. These beautiful oranges. Cypress just does really, really well with these combinations, so something to keep an eye on for sure. I mean, it might go less than the male. Yes, the male, I mean, arguably is a little bit brighter and definitely more colorful, but I'm thinking about the potential, obviously, when you're breeding this to other animals. I have, for example, myself a Spotnose GHI clown that's for hypo. I would love to see what I could make with something like that, with Cypress in the mix. But Cypress is just extraordinary. If you wanted to work clown projects, Cypress is not something that you should shy away from. Another one that goes well with clown would be Acid. Acid and Confusion are very similar to each other. We'll talk about Confusion a little bit later, but they are not the same. It is actually genetically proven that they are not, but they do just about the same thing. So a Pastave Acid clown here, that is the combination of Mojave, Pastel, Acid, and a visual clown boy. Acid is a great thing if you wanted to work it into clown. It's great in general, but they add so much character to the animal. Look at the granulation here. You can see what I'm talking about. When that ever so slight tip of the scale is flecked black, that dotting and whatnot throughout the animal, it's just top notch. It is something that I want to see more and more and more of. You got a nice creamy undertone to that, but then even throughout the animal's pattern, it's wild, it's chaotic, it's just absolutely everywhere, and it's granulated throughout it, holding nice color at that. The blacks themselves still splashed with a lot of coloration, and even them, look at this, the oranges have that black fleck on them as well. Lots of cool stuff, including the heads on the Acid clowns are just so extraordinary. They're very dotted, something that's you really only see with the monsoon clowns, I think, in many cases. So a really good boy if you wanted to start working that Acid gene into some of your females. Again, at a reserve price, but I always say kind of bid up to where you're comfortable. So if you're comfortable at, say, 400, don't just bid 400 unless you have that auto bids thing. You can walk it up there because you don't know what the reserve is going to drop off at. Just kind of take it up in increments, maybe 25 bucks a piece until you get to where you're comfortable. Just make sure you're paying attention to your bids. Of course, make sure you're paying attention to each of your bids. But a really cool boy and a great opportunity for someone who wants to work the Acid gene throughout their collection. Wonderful opportunity with about my favorite genetic out there. Of course, everybody knows it would be the Monarch from MSB Reptiles males here. This is a female at that. There's a lot of interest in here. I won't lie that I am also in on this one. So usually what I'll do is I'll place a little placeholder bid, which is exactly what I did earlier today. I got outbid, but that's okay because I'm not worried about that. I'm going to come along within the last 10 to 5 minutes and see what's up. And that's what I recommend a lot of people do, honestly. There's a good chance that this Monarch goes for a very favorable amount, especially for a female. And it's from one of the top breeders of Monarch. All of their Monarchs basically come from the OG source. They bought out the founder of the Monarch gene, so all of their Monarchs basically kind of are the original one. So a lot of their Monarchs kind of come from that bloodline. So a really cool animal and quality at that. If you can win the war for the bidding on this one, I cannot recommend them enough. Look at what I'm talking about. When you're talking about Monarchs, this is an extraordinary example of Monarch. This burgundy color, this is about as purplish, reddish as you're gonna get. That is such extraordinary coloring, and that is why I absolutely love Monarch. These oranges, they're very, very nice, but this is where the bread and butter is in the Monarch. It is absolutely gorgeous. You want to work that into literally everything you can if you're in a Monarch. That's what I want to do. So happy hunting, everybody. If you are into this, I wish you luck, but not more luck than me, right? All right, moving right along to this banana Enchi yellow belly pied from Petrogenetics, another quality breeder. We have purchased a beautiful animal from Petrogenetic ourselves, so I cannot recommend them enough. But look at the extraordinary looks on this. This is so wild. Very high pattern, and you get that quite often in Enchi pieds. Just a little bit of peaking down here, but you can see that crazy pied pattern throughout it. But just, wow, such extraordinary colors. Anytime you can just create chaos and lots of different pattern changes and saddles and such like that in a banana, anything, that is where it's at, because they are just so extraordinary and colorful. You see these nice whites and oranges and yellows and darn near this reddish, almost orange. You still get the lavenders throughout the animal as well. If you wanted to work some pied projects that are just extraordinary, but you don't want to break the bank, I feel like it will be pretty favorable considering what it should go for. And again, like I said, I can't recommend Petrogenetics enough. They're just extraordinary quality breeders and really good people too, honestly. So a very good one to take a bid on, whether you're looking for that great breeder to work into your pied projects, or of course, if you're just looking for a pet, that might still be the most extraordinary looking pet level thing that you can get. When I first saw this one here, I honestly thought for just a moment, when it was just its listing picture, so it's a little bit smaller, that this was a monsoon. Upon clicking on it, obviously I could tell that it wasn't quite a monsoon, but this is about as close as you're going to get to a monsoon without paying, of course, that monsoon price. The only real big difference, of course, is that the speckling and the spotting and everything like that doesn't go all the way up to the front. It's kind of starts to fade up here, and that's mostly because this dorsal stripe, which does run down the whole snake, and it's pretty sharp in its own right. It's just much thicker than a monsoon. And if you don't believe me, well, not quite the same clearly, but that's about as close as you're gonna get. What's doing that, you might ask? Well, that's the confusion in the pinstripe. This is actually a pair of animals. This female here is a black pastel confusion pinstripe, and then of course you do get a male, which is a confusion Enchi Orange Dream. There are no recessives in this, and most of the time from a monetary value, yes, you do want to focus on recessives, but there are awesome projects out there that are not the highway projects. Bells to this day are bread and butter, and they pay for a lot of your expenses when you breed and sell them, at least, that you're gonna have when you're doing breeding, like rats, rodents, maybe even other snakes. But this is pretty extraordinary. It's very cool. This animal just by itself, and it's kind of explains exactly why I love pinstripe so much. I have heard people in the same breath tell me that they don't care for pinstripe, they prefer something like monsoon. And it's fair, yes, it's better at being more wild, but pinstripe is extraordinary too. And they do somewhat similar things, and you can see here just by adding confusion that it's really doing some crazy stuff. The black pastel definitely darkens it up. You can definitely tell in the head. This female here has some okay size to her too. 335 grams. She's well started at that. Just again, something I had to show because I clicked on it because for a moment I was like, is this a monsoon? But it isn't. Obviously that dorsal stripe is much thicker. In fact, in this one, it's just gone outside of this maybe right there. But in a way, that's kind of cool. So, you know, if you wanted a monsoon and you didn't want to pay those monsoon prices, maybe then this is just a pet level for you. You find out whatever that reserve price is, you meet it, you beat it, and you kind of go from there. With that said, it does look like this is from Puerto Rico, so it will need to ship in potentially a little bit differently. Puerto Rico is technically a part of the United States, but I think it will obviously be a little different. It obviously has to go over waters to get here, whether it's in a plane or whatnot, probably, but still a really cool animal. And I just had to show it just by the beautiful example and look of this. Really cool and awesome. And I always love seeing animals from other breeders around the world. Just goes to show you how awesome and huge this community really is. Our second to last one here would be this Enchi highway clown. I was just talking about highways and stuff like that. Well, what's better than just doing the highway? Well, yeah, just throw that recessive right back into it. It's an extraordinary, beautiful animal. When you're talking about freeways anyways, which is the only difference there is the gravel is swapped out with asphalt, but they are incredibly similar to each other. When you're adding Enchi into that, you call it a Mardi Gras. So I don't know, maybe you call this a Mardi Gras clown as well. No reserve on this girl. So if you wanted to work highway clowns, this is a visual girl. There ain't no getting better than this. The only thing, of course, to remember, some people will know this, but some might not. This is an allelic combo, highway that is. Yellow belly and gravel make up that combo. And what that means is that it is kind of acting like a double-edged sword here. In one breath, you will always get an animal that is either yellow belly or gravel, but you will never get an animal that is both with just this snake breeding to, say, a normal at least. The only way to redo that would be to have a male that has one of those two genes already there. And if that's the case, if that's something you wanted to do to recreate this animal, maybe add more to the highway clown, I would recommend doing it with gravel. The reason being is because if you get a super gravel, that's going to look a lot better than a super ivory. So if you do something with a yellow belly base, a male with a yellow belly base, you have the potential to hit the super yellow, which is an ivory, which is pretty much almost always an all white snake, sometimes with some yellows on it and such like that. But obviously the super gravel is going to look a lot better, in my opinion anyways, than the ivory would, just because that potential to completely get an all white snake. And that's cool, but not what you're going for, of course, in this case. It looks like it actually might be red stripe as well. They don't put it in the title up here, but it is in the genetics here, and it was from a pairing of that. In fact, more than just a pairing, it was from a red stripe to a red stripe, so it's highly likely it is. So, I mean, you could always get that tested. It's not guaranteed. They even put possible here. I definitely send that in. Also, by the way, you could always send that test in, though, to RGI. Use our code Rhyno, in fact, and you save 15% straight through their website. So, very cool opportunity if you wanted to start working that. Like I said, there's no reserve right now, and you could be making awesome combos just like this. What's not to love, really? All this cool pattern just splashed without these beautiful oranges throughout it. Cool, awesome undertone pattern. And then just look how bright the head pattern is. Isn't that just interesting? Like this almost like purplish Sharpie just kind of got put over top of it, and then this little teeny smile. Very interesting, very cool animal. And again, we already talked about how quality petrogenetics is. And for our last animal would be this proven Panda Pied. Now, you might think of the panda as an all black snake. It is the combination of the super black pastel. What's cool about this is that this is a proven breeder male. So if you wanted to work awesome projects like this, well, he's always going to pass one copy of black pastel, and he's always going to pass that one genetic of pied. So everything will be het pied black pastel minimum. Obviously, if you were to try to recreate this combination, if you put it to a black pastel pied, you'd have a 50-50 shot of always producing Panda Pieds. Now, maybe that's not what you want to do because you know about the potential for super black pastels to have a bit more of a chance to be a kinked snake. Well, there's still great opportunities. Put it to a blackhead pied. Put it to a mahogany pied. Create a black pastel mahogany pied, something along those lines. I think those would actually be better in many cases because as you can see, the Panda Pied, when babies, the head is black. The spot here is black, but they are very low pattern. Sometimes, and I'm not kidding you, you can get an all white Panda Pied. Now, doesn't that kind of stink? That's not what you were going for. So being a genetic powerhouse is still within its power, but most people want it for that bold black on white. But as you can see, they age a little differently. Sometimes they lose some of that pitch black look to it, and Not that this is a bad looking animal by any means, but I think that blackhead would be a great one to put into this. And again, no reserve, only one bid. This would be the latest one in all of the auctions that we're looking at today. I think Sunday at some point it will go, but really cool animal with a lot of potential in there. I really recommend, if you were to get something like this and try to work in the project, of course, if you're not adverse to making the Panda Pied, that is always a potentiality, but I really recommend the mahogany route or the blackhead route. Just create some differences in there and then potentially bring some of that pattern back into the Pied. It still will be a lower pattern snake when you hit on black pastel, which again, will be always, but it will still show a little bit different looks, and dare I say, maybe darker and better in some cases. And that'll do it for this week's auctions. Hope you enjoyed. If you end up winning anything from this auction, we'd love to hear about it in the comments below. And check out our most recent video where we did a tour of the entire NARBC show at Schaumburg right here, or our top 5 ball pythons that we picked out from the show right here.